Thank you. Like I said, my name is Norbert. I'm one of the sysadmins at Signet, and I am talking to you about roughly about Pi-hole and why you would like to set it up. This is not going to be a step-by-step tutorial. This is just going to be an overview of benefits and benefits of having Pi-hole on your network. So let's begin. Well, let's start with what is Pi-hole. Pi-hole, in short, is a DNS server that you have on your network. And this DNS server, it helps you block unwanted domains, unwanted content, primarily. It helps with your privacy by blocking certain domains that can be harmful or that may contain ads. Now, also, Pi-hole, because it's a DNS server, it will help you block content that across all the devices on your local network. So if you have tablets or PCs or something like that, you don't have to install any additional software to have to run that. Also, if you're a data geek like me, it has really cool insights and statistics on your browsing on your network. So it has, which I'm going to show later on, all kinds of different statistics. All right, so why use Pi-hole? Well, the main reason you want to use Pi-hole is to block ads. Also, because you're blocking ads, that may increase speed of your internet, so that will improve your browsing speed. Another benefit of having Pi-hole is because you can have multiple domain servers on your network. Like, for example, one that only kids use and that you are more strict with, and the second one for the rest of the participants on the network. Now, another benefit is security. So Pi-hole will help you stop malicious domains, so from being accessed. Now, in my favorite, I pretty much why I use Pi-hole at home is for my local DNS. Pi-hole is probably the easiest way to set up a DNS at home for your home lab if you have one, and it's very easy to manage. And then obviously another good reason to have Pi-hole running is because you can run it on pretty much any hardware you have. Older hardware like mine, I have a probably 12-year-old laptop that I'm running Pi-hole and Docker on, and it's perfect for that. So you can reuse an old desktop or hardware that you have, maybe it's lying around. Okay, so now one of the things that you would need to do is, if you would set up Pi-hole, is you would have to have access to your home router. So this is an example of my home router, which is a pfSense box. And then after you set up Pi-hole, you have to let know all your devices on your local network that you have Pi-hole installed, and so they can all use your Pi-hole service. So now, in this instance, for example, this is a Windows PC that I'm creating an entry for, and I'm telling it to use 192.168.1.5, which is my Pi-hole instance, to use as a primary DNS server, and that server. And then from then on, that Windows PC will use this DNS server as its main DNS query. So that way you can only you have to set up only once. You can only set it once, and once you set it up on your router, all the devices on your network will be using that service. Now here. So this is an example of, for example, I went yesterday to CNET. So the bottom picture is without using Pi-hole, because you can actually disable Pi-hole for a certain time if you like. So I went to CNET, and as you can see, there's an advertisement right on it. And then the picture above is literally all I did was I enabled Pi-hole to work. And you can see that the advertisements no longer showing, but there's a big white space there. And the reason there's a big space is because those DNS queries that your browser is or your computer is sending, those queries are being sinkhole, and they're not being forwarded to the advertisements, to the advertiser servers on the internet. Now, so this is an example of my actually Pi-hole. So this is my setup. So this is what it looks like when you have it set up. As you can notice on the top right corner, I'm blocking about 800,000 domains. And then on my network, I have, I think, 4 or 5 PCs, and I have, I believe there is a couple tablets, laptops, and all the stuff. So as you can see that I'm blocking it, this Pi-hole is blocking 53% of the DNS queries that are going to the internet. Now, what's important to note is that all those queries are not only advertisements, but they're also tracking. So for example, if you have a Windows PC on your network, a Windows PC constantly talks to Microsoft servers, and it's a good and bad, because your Windows instance or even Linux or some Android, for example, I have a Fire Stick which talks to Amazon all the time and sends information from your device to Amazon. And to be honest, I don't want that information to be shared with those third-party companies, so I actually block that using this technique. So that's why you see that 50% of my traffic is all my queries is actually blocked. They're not going out. So that's the another use for this here. So when you set up Pi-hole, you have a flexibility of specifying which domains you want to block. I'm showing you a list of a couple of websites of lists that you can use and load into this instance, and that will help you block unwanted content. Now, I also show you a picture of what those files look like. So essentially all it is the domain with an IP, and as you can see, it's an IP of 127.0.0.1, which is a local host IP. It's a loopback IP, and then when there is a query coming out from your browser or your PC to that domain, it gets routed nowhere. Essentially, it stays within your local network. Now, like I said before, one of the main advantages of running this Pi-hole is local DNS. It makes it very easy to set up domain names for your local IPs. For example, I have 2 laptops, 2 desktops that I have Linux on it, and I have various services running on that. So I use this technique to, instead of connecting to those devices on my local network with IP, I have a domain, and it's, like I said, it's probably one of the easiest DNS home setups that you can have, and it's very easy. So as you can tell, I have set up something called demo.home, and that points to an IP address on my local network. Now, let's talk about some potential challenges running this device, running Pi-hole in your network. Well, the main one is false positives. There are possibilities that you will have false positives. So it will block some websites or some traffic that you may want to have access to. Now, the next drawback is you have to maintain this instance. So you have to be able to update, because they do release, Pi-hole gets updates quite regularly, and so you have to maintain it. And then another thing is that it will not block all the ads and not all the tracking, but it does a pretty good job that it does block. But for example, what it doesn't block is YouTube video ads. So if you're watching a YouTube and you see an ad, unfortunately, that is not able to be blocked by Pi-hole, because Pi-hole mainly works as a DNS filtering filtering device. Now, I'm just going to talk to the setup that I have at home. I have an old laptop, which, like I said, I believe is 12 to 15 years old. I have a Linux on it. I'm running I'm running a Debian version of Linux, and I'm using Docker to run my my Pi-hole instance. Why is Docker? Well, because Docker is very easy to maintain, very easy to implement, and very and it's nice and scalable, and I can move it between several different systems if I have to. I can move it from one system to the other. So that's pretty much why Docker, because it just allows me to easily maintain this instance. Now, because I'm using Docker, and I would my main requirement for this DNS instance is to have its own IP. I have to create a network for Docker network, which is called MAC-VLAN. MAC-VLAN essentially it's a Docker network that is able to assign. You can able to assign local IP addresses on your local home net. So instead of using, normally when you use Docker, the Docker container shares the IP address with the host. But if you use MAC-VLAN, that will help you assign a different IP address to your Docker container. So that way you can have a DNS server on a separate IP on your network, which helps to manage. So if you want to have multiple instances, you can deploy multiple instances of Pi-hole Docker image and just run them on different IPs and point different devices to each IP. Now, because MAC-VLAN is not very well known and it's quite tricky to implement, this is a command on Linux how to create a MAC-VLAN network. As you can see that there's some specifications that you have to give. Like the one specification is that you have to set up provide a subnet mask gateway. The network device that your Pi-hole will connect to. And also, what I actually like is, by another requirement, I provide a range to my network. So in an instance, I'm providing 192.168.1.253, which every time a node will connect to it, it will use this. Every time the container will connect to it, it will use this IP address. Now, because I'm sort of lazy, I like to use my Docker containers, and I like to use Docker Compose files. You write the file once, and it's very easy to use and upload and use and update, and you hardly have to update this file. Now, as you may notice, there is an IP address in the Docker Compose. Now, with the Docker network, the MAC-VLAN network, you can specify IP address, and this is where you would do it. So in your Docker Compose, you would specify the IP address right here, which is under Docker under network, and then you can specify any IP that you want that is free on your network. You don't have to specify the IP address that I'm giving it here. This is just a placeholder. Just in case I would forget to specify my IP address, this will be the default IP address that this network will be assigned to. But again, if running this instance, the best way to do it is to use Docker and Docker Compose file. And this is an example. Actually, this is my example that I run at home. Now, let's talk about alternatives. Pi-hole is not the only game in town. AdGuard-Home is one of other companies that provides essentially the same service. You can run it in the same way. You can run it as a Docker instance, and it will do its job. Now, I understand that this could be difficult to deploy, to have Docker, have Linux installed, have, you know, an alternative to having your own instances, you can actually use DNS providers. So I'm showing here two DNS providers that you can use. So for example, if you use Quad 9s, normally Quad 9s is the DNS server name is address is 9.9.9.9, and this is an unfiltered DNS. So essentially, you replace your DNS from your ISP with Quad 9 address, and you can use it. Now, if you like to have some protection, like some malware filtering, for example, if you use 9.9.9.11, that is a filtered address. So what happens if you use that address, Quad 9 will actually block certain malicious websites from being accessed. So that's why I said filtered. So they are maintaining their list. I think last time I checked, the list contains around 1 million domains or something like that. And it's fairly good if you don't want to have your own Pi-hole instance running. But if you want, now you can also use Cloudflare. Cloudflare is another provider that provides DNS services. And Cloudflare has three different IP addresses. The main IP address for their DNS service 1.1.1.1, which is an unfiltered DNS. That's actually the DNS that I use at home. I find that it works fairly well. And I never had an issue with it. Now, if you use 1.1.1.3, this DNS, again, is filtered. Cloudflare maintains a list of domains that they are stopping. So number 3, the .3 is a domain server that filters malicious content and also adult content. If you just want to filter some malicious website, then you will use 1.1.2 if you want to use 1.1.3, that filters both adult content and malicious content. Now, OpenDNS is another option to do the same thing, essentially. But OpenDNS is a paid service that is run by Cisco. And OpenDNS, you can actually, you can add into that page service your own list of blocked DNS names that you don't domain names, sorry, that you want to block. So essentially, this can replace Pi-hole completely, and you can run it on OpenDNS servers, but just provide the list of domains that you want to block. Now, if you don't want to use any of that, which is, I understand, it's it can be daunting to set it up, and you do need some knowledge to set it up. My one recommendation is use Firefox or Chrome, although my main browser is Firefox. But if you use the two extensions, one is uBlock Origin, which is primarily designed to block ads, and then Privacy Badger, which is from EFF, and that Privacy Badger helps you mitigate third-party tracking. So between those two add-ons, pretty much most of the ads on the internet that you encounter should be blocked. And those are the two add-ons that I pretty much recommend everybody install on their instance. So like I said, those are that's my recommendation. This was short, but it wasn't meant to be a full-on step-by-step tutorial. It was just something to bring you to attention to hopefully you can use and give you some example to use. Thank you again, and then let me know if there's any question.